Okay.
Good morning. I bring you greetings from the Housatonic Congregational Church, United Church of Christ, in Housatonic, Massachusetts. Our reading this morning is from the Hebrew Scriptures, from the book of Isaiah, chapter 6. In the year that King Uzziah died, I saw the Lord sitting upon a throne, high and lifted up, and his train filled the temple. Above him stood the seraphim. Each had 6 wings. With 2 he covered his face, and with 2 he covered his feet, and with 2 he flew. And one called to one another and said, Holy, holy, holy is the Lord of hosts. The whole earth is full of his glory. And the foundations of the threshold shook at the voice of him who called, and the house was filled with smoke. And I said, Woe is me, for I am lost, for I am a man of unclean lips, and I dwell in the midst of a people of unclean lips. For my eyes have seen the King, the Lord of hosts. Then he flew one of the seraphim to me, having in his hand a burning coal which he had taken from tongs from the altar. And he touched my mouth and said, Behold, this has touched your lips. Your guilt is taken away and your sin forgiven. And I heard the voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send? And who will go for us? Then I said, Here I am, send me. And he said, Go and say to his people, Hear and hear, but do not understand. See and see, but do not perceive. Make the heart of this people fat, and their ears heavy, and shut their eyes, lest they see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their hearts, and turn and be healed. Then I said, How long, O Lord? And he said, Until cities lie waste without inhabitant, and houses without men, and the land is utterly desolate, and the Lord removes men far away. And for the forsaken places are many in the midst of this land. And though 1/10 remain in it, it will be burned again like a terebinth or an oak, whose stump remains standing when it is felled. The holy seed, it is its stump. The words of the prophet Isaiah, may God bless it for our understanding. Prophets like Isaiah, they're a weird bunch. When I was in seminary, we had to take 5, count them, 5 Bible courses. 2 in the Old Testament, 2 in the New Testament, and 1 that could be anything that we chose. So one of the courses that I took was called The Latter Prophets. Isaiah, which was one of them. The professor was the typical kind of nutty professor. Hair was all afro, he'd come in, there would be papers all over the place hanging out of his book. He'd try to stay on task, knew he couldn't, would set a timekeeper in the back of the room, and he said, Jason, it's up to you to let me know if I get too far off the track, because I can go just about anywhere with all this stuff. So it's up to you to keep me on track and tell me, that the time's getting late and what's going on. Well, by the end of the class, he had papers all over the place and was just he was a prophet himself. But he started out telling us, don't be a prophet. Prophets are not well liked. They are not people that are often respected in their community. They say tough things. Listen to what Isaiah said. The popularity of prophets, he told us, is about 5%. So if you want to be liked and you want to be loved, don't be a prophet. They get killed. They get martyred. Not a good thing to be. Just don't even go there. So we're all looking at him and going like, an Old Testament professor that's telling us is teaching a course about prophets that says don't go there. Well, it's true. Prophets tell us things that we often don't want to hear. They attack the powers that be a lot of times. They say, now wait here just a minute. You're not doing things that God likes. You're not doing things that are right. And you need to stop it. Well, you can imagine the powers that be don't like that very much. And they come down on the prophets pretty hard. The people that they're talking to, they don't really like it too much either. They don't want to hear that they're bad. They don't want to hear that they're not doing things that are right. One of the new translations of this Isaiah, text puts it right on the line. This is from the Message, which is a modern-day version of interpretation of the word, and Eugene Patterson translates some of this and says, listen hard, but you're not going to get it. Look hard, but you won't catch on. I mean, nobody likes to hear that he's kind of telling them they're dumb. I mean, right? Listen hard, but you're not going to get it. Look hard, but you won't catch on. People don't like to hear that kind of things. Prophets are not terribly well liked. Prophets are needed. And we have new prophets among us. We have lots of prophets among us this day and age. You know who they are. And they're not always well liked. The Occupy Wall Street movement, they're I think they're very prophetic. And they're not really well liked by a lot of people. That 1% doesn't really like hearing from the 99% that, we want more of your money. Let's face it. Some of the 99% aren't real pleased with the Occupy Wall Street. But they awaken us. They get us to listen to maybe things that we don't want to hear and things that we don't want to do. And they're necessary for us in our community. One of my favorite modern-day prophets, Dr. Seuss. A good prophet. And seeing our theme for this Lenten season is eco-justice, the Lorax, one of his later books. 1971, this was published. I was the ripe old age of about 17, so I was way beyond Dr. Seuss at that point. So I came acquainted with this book later in life. And it's a big movie now. If you haven't seen it, I haven't yet, but it's on my agenda to go, but I know the book. I'm a little bashful about going to the movie because sometimes they ruin my books that I really like, but I'm hoping for good things from this one. But if you're not familiar with the story of the lorax is this creature that lives. He lives in the trees. Not among the trees, but in the trees. He says, I am the lorax. I speak for the trees. I speak for the trees have no tongue. And I'm asking you, sir, at the top of my lungs, he was very upset as he shouted and puffed, that this thing that you've made out of my truffle, what is this thing that you've made out of my truffle? There's the lorax right there. He's the prophet of the story. This guy with the green hands is cutting down the trees in which the lorax lives. The beautiful, beautiful trees where the lorax lives. See them? You can see some of them here. They're beautiful. And he's decided that they're so beautiful that he's going to cut them down and make something out of them. So he does. And greed sets in. And the lorax is kind of his confidant, the prophet. And the lorax keeps coming to him and saying, excuse me, things aren't going just right here. He cuts down the trees. He makes all the stuff. He makes factories. He gets his friends and neighbors to invest in the factories. Is this beginning to sound a little familiar? They make lots of money. Sounding more familiar? Greed sets in and they make more and more and more money. A profit. And I'm sure you know where this is headed. He wanted to make more money. And as he did, more and more of the trees got cut down. And more things began to happen. Because not only did the lorax not have a home, but a lot of people, a lot of animals did not have a home. The geese, in Dr. Seuss's terms, had to fly away because the air was filled with smog. The fish couldn't live in the rivers. Beginning to hit home just a little bit? Well, of course, people got mad. And the lorax got mad, as most prophets do. They get mad and they get angry and they say, this has got to stop. And then the people get mad and say, but I don't want to stop. This is the big head honcho. And then I got mad. I got terribly mad. I yelled at the lorax. Now listen here, Dad. All you do is yappity yap and say, bad, bad, bad. Well, I have my rights, and I'm telling you, I intend to keep on doing just what I do. And for your information, you lorax, I'm figuring on biggering to give everybody what they need. And the prophet speaks. Until just like in Isaiah, when Isaiah ends up in this modern day message, he says, every tree, every stump, a huge field of stump is gone. And there we have it. All the trees are gone. And what are we going to do about it? Asked the prophet. What are we going to do? Because the trees are gone. But as Isaiah said, but there's a holy seed in these stumps. I think Dr. Seuss must have read a little Isaiah. Because at the end, we see the greedy man telling the story to the little boy, and all that's left is this stump that says, unless. What does that mean? The, quote, bad guy, the greedy man, our greedy society. It's not really sure what that means, unless what? His name is the Onceler. Okay? He says, I worried about it ever since that day that he cut down the very last tree. I worried about it. I didn't know what to do. But now, says the Onceler, now that you're here, the young boy, us maybe, now that you're here, the word of the lorax, the prophet, seems perfectly clear. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. No, it's not. Nothing's going to get better. No, it's not. Kind of downer ending. Unless we do something. For underneath that stump that's marked unless is the last seed, the truffula tree, that is there for us to find and us to plant and us to rejuvenate. I think that's where we are in our lives with our planet. Unless we do something and dig deep and find that very last seed, unless we listen to the words of the prophets, unless those people that have maybe unintentionally or maybe intentionally hear the words of the prophet and wonder what to do, it may be too late. I hope not. I hope that we can listen to the prophets. I hope that God will enter our lives, and that I hope that we are the unless we do something. Amen.